Yeah, I think it's time to start writing again. You know, I've been I didn't know how that would be going, or if I'd be jumping back into that, and I've been kind of taking a break from that, and taking a break from doing videos too for a while, and you know, I've been doing a lot of work, inner work, and getting my own nervous system kind of regulated, and then so yesterday I was in the store with baby and went down the notebook aisle because I wanted to get a planner for this after school thing that I do, and then saw the notebooks and looked and dug around and, you know, decided, well, I should have one for a journal. And college rule, always. College rule, I write a lot of words. If you read my books, you know I write a lot of words. And so I write them small and try to save paper. Went ahead and got some of my favorite pens. Oh man, when you write as much as I do, yeah, these are the ones. These are the ticket, easy on the wrist, you know, because I write everything by hand. You know, that activates that right brain. And then you can write out here in nature, water. It's a process having to go back and type all that, but that's another story. And so then I spent a good bit of money at the store, and if you know my relationship with money, it's an evolution I've been on. And then so as soon as we left, it felt good. It felt good to be investing in this and to be picking this back up, and to be, even at whatever level that is, even if it's just little bits. You know, my last book, I wrote the first sentence, and then it was several months, and then I wrote the first page, and then it was a year before I even started picking back up. You know, it was when we were in the Earth House in that blizzard, 7 feet of snow, and that's when I kind of picked back up and wrote Stylish Transient. And then as soon as we left the store, I checked my email, and basically the exact amount we had spent in the store on stuff that we needed to get, the exact amount had been sent to my account from audiobook sales from Uncaged Eden. You know, because I had released it all for free. It was all for free on YouTube and on Audio Mac, but to be on Audible, you can't do it for free. You can't even choose your own price. And so for years, they've been trying to send me a check, and I didn't give them an address or a bank account or anything, because, you know, I didn't use money for 8 years, right? I was against it, really. And so then, you know, now I'm going through this shift, this transition. And so I went, and I have a bank account now, and so I added the bank account to Audible. And so just minutes after I decided to pick back up the pen and the paper, I get this check from nothing, from this thing I created for free to give to the world for free. The work that was on my heart to give to the world for free, with no expectation or anticipation of, you know, any kind of money ever coming in for it. And it came in at that exact moment. I was like, holy, you know, if that's not confirmation. That felt really nice. That felt really good. Then here, just moments ago, you know, I came down here and I smudged a little bit and prayed with the water, and sat here and tried to figure out even what I was gonna say. You know, I'm not scripting this or anything, and then look over, and there's literally, it's been flooding because there was all kinds of water. There's literally a entire pack of yellow American spirits full of tobacco, wet and soaked from the water, but hung up just right in front of me, sitting right in front of where I'm at. I'll show you at the end. You know, and if you know anything about the way that I move or pray, you know, smudge with sage and we pray with tobacco, and she's just sitting right there. And I quit smoking a while back, you know, before we had baby. So I don't carry tobacco with me. So that's one thing, that kind of element that I'm missing with, is, you know, being able to offer that tobacco to the land or in prayer like that. And there's literally an entire pack of American Spirit, the good stuff, sitting right in front of me, hung up, trash, floated up. Holy. If that's not confirmation. You know, I've been trying to figure out how this channel is going to go, because it's going to be, I'm trying to transition it. You know, I've got all these shorts and stuff, and a few long videos, and about all the metaphysical stuff. And, you know, if you know my writing, you know, I write about a lot of things. I write about spirituality, my spiritual journey, the metaphysical, esoteric things, you know, Fibonacci and Phi and Schumann resonance, and I write about, you know, social justice, environmental action, frontline protests. You know, I write about living off grid and my take on agriculture and living with the land in a good way and eating wild foods and agricultural hierarchy and, you know, lots of different things, and really it's all the same thing and how it all ties together. And so this channel, you know, I've read elements from the books and, you know, talk about some of my no money philosophy. You know, traveled the country for 8 years with no money, no phone, no car, just living in service. And so I think I've said what I had to say about a lot of that stuff. And I took several months off, you know, and as I was kind of doing my own work. You know, it's been a heck of a year. I've been frazzled. You know, our spiritual leader passed away about a year ago. You know, I was his right hand man, his helper, his cook, his firekeeper, his grass mower. And so it was easy to stay spiritually grounded when I was in that space for a lot of the year. We were building these earthbag houses out on the res, or we living off grid at the homestead, spiritually centered space. And so then now we're moving back into this space, you know, having to reevaluate my relationship with money, having baby, you know, living back in concrete world, computer world, having a phone, you know, and, you know, it's free to me, this phone and this plan or whatever. And so I knew I needed to be using that opportunity to share with you guys in this way, you know, because that was my background before I was living off grid, was doing production and finding that balance of being able to share with you but not being glued to the phone, you know. How to live in balance with using money but also living from my heart and living in service. You know, doing work that you would do for free, and then the money is a byproduct. You know, I work with kids after school, and it's absolutely something I would do for free. I've done it a bunch for free, you know. I do the cage-free mechanic, the free automotive clinic, you know, and some money comes in through that, through our Patreon, you know, and of course I would do that for free. I work all week just so I can take a weekend to fix a bunch of people's cars for free. These books, obviously, you know, I've been doing these for free for a long time. Nobody would ever, I would think, pay me to, can never publish one of these traditionally because of the types of things I write about, you know. And then now money's coming in from that. That's pretty neat. I just glance back at the first line of this, you know, because I'm sitting with how this book, I don't even know what this new book's going to be about. In the first line, I've only touched money 4 times in the last year. You know, this was 2018. Back when I thought the world was crumbling, falling apart, collapsing, society was collapsing, the government was, you know, all kinds of ways, and the grid was going to be shutting down, Schumann resonance was going to be rising, earth things were going to be happening, all these things that now are coming to fruition, you know. Now the mainstream is starting to realize, holy cow, maybe DJ's not as crazy as we thought he was. Jeez, running off to live off grid. And you know, that was a long time ago. And I didn't use it for 8 years. It's free. I had such abundance, you know. Everything I needed, you know, I pared back what I needed. And so now, relearning or learning a new way, the next step of that evolution, how to hold on to that and cultivate that abundance, but within the framework of the money world, you know, at a time that maybe who knows what the money world is going to be looking like over these next months and years. And so I think that's probably going to be some of what this new book is going to be about, is that journey of, you know, I've written plenty about living without money and the beautiful life that that can provide and can leave you free to provide for others. You know, so a lot of my journey this last year and throughout the course, I'm sure, of as I write this, will be how to live within this society and still be able to hold on to that abundance and live in a way where money is not controlling you, but it's working for you, you know. And it's an ongoing journey, you know. And really, I'm looking forward to writing. This, you know, it's the writing process. That's the transformative part, you know. It's, holy cow, it's at least as transformative, but probably more than these experiences that I've had. You know, I've lived an incredible life, you know. Incredible places, incredible people that I've been able to meet, experiences. You know, I've eaten the most incredible food living without money than I ever did back when I had full-time job and salary and benefits and all that. You know, and say like my first book, you know, about our experience at Standing Rock, being the chef of a winter blizzard camp, living in teepees and tents, and in tents, indeed. And, you know, that was where all that veil got lifted, and just understanding, you know, a new understanding of what the world was and what I thought the world was, and that all got peeled away. And then finding spirituality after I was at a place of not being open to that, and experiencing this gifting, free, communal living, and experiencing what that is in such an intense bubble of that, so that now when you come out in this world and it's diluted, you still can hang on to that. But it was through writing about it, you know. I thought I was going to write a 10-page essay because I felt it important for us to share that experience. You know, we came back and thought the world was shifted and changed. You know, we all had this mass awakening. We thought the world was getting ready to come awake, and the government, everything was getting ready to fall away, and we all had this new intensified connection with the earth and understanding of our role and our, you know. And so I felt it so important to write, and went and hid in the woods. Thought I was going to write a 10-page essay. Wrote a 700-page book. Holy shit. You know, it was a mess. It was me just, you know, pouring my heart out onto the page as I was having to process, you know, all that trauma that we went through. You know, trauma along the front line of being, you know, sprayed and tear gassed and shot at and all that by the people that, you know, up until that point you thought were there to help you. Or the trauma of understanding everything, all these elements of the world that you thought were just part of how the world was, that these were the control mechanisms of society and civilization put into place, you know, thousands of years ago, really, you know. There's a lot about agriculture, that book, you know. I'd read Ishmael, it's my favorite book. I'd read it 3 times, twice before camp and then once right after, and each time hugely impactful for me understanding, you know, our connection with the earth and the history of agricultural and agricultural hierarchy and all these things, you know. And so it was through writing that really all that, my own worldview was able to sink in, you know. So I definitely recommend writing, whether you're a writer or not, journaling. And, you know, it's through that my mind and heart and all of it was able to pour out, and for me to have a better understanding of what I even believed, who I was. You know, and I feel a deep need to be helping the world and helping on a big way. And, you know, you have these little conversations with people, and that's good, and you can kind of nudge people along a little bit. But I felt like, you know, putting together just bigger works, because it's really so much. There's so many different angles of everything. And I see the way that it all ties together, that grand mosaic. And to be able to share that in a conversation, you can't, you know. But put it in a book, and then the few people that it reaches, and trusting, knowing that there's book magic that works for me, and I'd find I could be in a cabin off in the woods, and there would happen to be the book on the shelf. This was the case right over Standing Rock. That was the exact book that I needed to pick up to inspire me to go on that next step of my thing. So knowing that book magic's there for me, I can just pick up one page of a book, and then I just have a minute to look at this book, and I open it up to the exact right page. That's the exact thing that I need to be. And that same magic happens on YouTube too. You know, you find just the right video that's right there for the thing, and I'm sure that, you know, I've set that intention and prayed about that this reaches the folks it needs to, and I have the right words to pour through me, you know, even if I don't understand what it's going to mean to you, you know, you probably do. And so I trust that those books are going to reach the right people, you know. 'Cause I'm not through some publisher, you know, I just publish it for free, and then I go back into the woods, you know, and I've got, you know, There's a bunch of downloads of my books, all for free. Who knows if people actually read those things, but people do start reaching out, and they find me on Facebook, or they track me down. They're like, this book is like it's speaking to me, and so I know that that's happening. That's, even if it's just that one person that it finds, And in the end, knowing that the real beauty, the real magic was the transformation it creates in me, God, it's so huge. I'm just getting so excited now, knowing that I'm stepping into this. I didn't know, this was just yesterday that I picked up this notebook in the store, and it just all started to felt right, Really started to feel right. It's exciting. So I think, this book's going to be about a lot of stuff. All my books are about a lot of stuff. If you know me, if you've read any of my work, it's obviously about a lot of stuff. I've gotten better. My latest book's this one, in Stylish Transient. I gave away my copy of Stylish Transient, but I've gotten to where I can pack it into a tighter space. This is like that, I don't know, this is that foundation of just everything, all of my worldview. And this book, I figured out, this is a nice one to have in paper, because it's really just built to where you can just open it up and read just that one page, and that one little page of magic. It's all broken up into parts, and parts about food or food philosophy, or parts about the vibrational makeup of the universe and Moog synthesizers, and then flip into the journey that we're on, and life on the res, and the true American history, and spiritual things. And so I'm sure this book's going to be about lots of stuff, and of course we had baby this year, and so I'm sure it's going to be a lot about that new journey of my life, and how all these philosophies, have been so, especially if you read all my work, have been through an evolution. I've still, when a lot of people have their spiritual awakening, they think they figured it all out, and they have this grand awakening, and everybody else is wrong, and this, and this for fact, and you've got this, and you're so preachy, and you're so stuck in this thing, and then you come through this evolution of realizing that it's a longer game, and there's lots of different dynamics at play, and there's, and now I've been humbled a lot more. That's been my biggest prayer and biggest movement, if you read my stuff, is this humility, and this, it's a lot of my work on the res, getting humbled out there. Having the humility now, as we have baby, to understand, we've had to use Ziploc bags, and we've had to create more trash, and we've had to work on our house with drywall and insulation, all these things that maybe I've been written against and been against, living in a permanent space or doing all these things, because we had to do what we had to do. We got health things going on, and baby, and so I've definitely been humbled, where I preach about, living without money, and going and the thing propping up the destruction of the war machine, of the industry machine, and all these different things, and and I've had to step into that, and I've always been one to push those boundaries, and to be willing to find exactly where that edge is and that boundary. And so I'm sure that lots of this is going to be about that, and also, where maybe some of my others work are, it's some idealistic view, and it's like, how can society actually live this way? Everybody can't just give up all their money and go hitchhiking the country and go volunteering after tornadoes, or doing earthbag stuff, or just helping people, That'll never work, that everybody just gives up everything and goes helps people, how it would function, Where I still believe that is possible in the case, and as humanity goes through this grand shift of consciousness that is happening currently, I believe that's an end goal, but we can't just overnight drop everything and do that. That would, people aren't ready for that. And, I've lived in the past knowing that even though I have such an extreme story, that it's those little nuggets of inspiration that I know for a fact, I know that helps people. I've talked to so many that it has. But I think maybe this new work will be some real world ways, you know, now that I'm starting to understand and to learn how to navigate this space, you know, how to navigate capitalism and working for money and having to do all the things, but in a way that still is in alignment, you know, with your heart. You know, it'll be, obviously I've continued my spiritual journey and understanding, you know, and learning how to hold on to that more. You know, before in the past I've traversed through society, but always as a visitor, and always have my little things that help me to stay connected to prayer and connected to the res and connected to that Garden of Eden and to my visionary experiences. And I would, you know, hold on to those songs and, you know, have to pray solid to even be able to move, you know, down the sidewalk through the city. And it was always just a visitor, and always just knew I was just traveling through there. Now it's in a different way, you know, I'm part of it. You know, I'm still on the fringe. I'm still down here by the river, you know, but town's just right up there. So I'm sure a lot of it's going to be you know, how to take these idealized views and ideas that I have, and, you know, my spiritual journey ability has deepened. You know, my nervous system just in these last few months, I've done a lot of work. And it's not that, you know, I got frazzled this whole last year because you know, our spiritual leader passed away. We weren't going to the res anyway this year because we had baby about that time, and then everything's up frazzled there, and I'm living more in society and doing this stuff and having to, you know, getting frazzled with, you know, living in a house and having to upkeep a house and fix all these things with things I don't particularly believe in. I believe in building earth houses, you know, I believe in natural materials. I believe insulation and drywall are toxic, you know, but then we're having to put these up because this is the space that we're in, and so got frazzled, but then I've come back into a place that's more healed than I even was before this year. You know, it used to be I couldn't go into a Walmart grocery store. I would have to be just super in prayer and song to even be able to function in a grocery store with this mass capitalism, my views on agriculture and waste and food production and free food from the earth and just being on cement and the lights and just all of it, you know, so much. I would take everything I had and I would be zonked for the whole day. And now I've come to a place where it's awesome. I can go back into those spaces and I'm all right. I'm coming back online in a way that I haven't been for a decade, you know, from that original, that nervous system collapse or whatever. You know, I had to go live in the woods, had to go live on the res, live in the woods, live on homesteads, escape society, disappear into the woods. Everybody in the mainstream thought I would gone crazy. I had to go escape all that to be able to function. Out there I could function good, you know, I could function on the res as firekeeper with lots of different things going on, and I could hold my center easily because I was focused, and that's where I was. And out here everything wants to distract you and separate you, and so I'm sure this journey of getting all that back in line is going to be a part of it, especially now. The world's going through some stuff right now. Holy. People need some help right now, keeping their nervous system regulated, seeing the bigger picture, connecting, grounding, seeing that, you know, learning how to trust that things are going to be all right. You know, and there's a bigger thing going on. What's crumbling away is the thing that's not serving us. That's the thing that's been holding us back, is what's crumbling away. So I'm sure it's going to be something about that. I'm sure I'm going to have plenty of esoteric, metaphysical stuff. Schumann resonance, the resonant frequency of the earth. If you know me, you know I love talking about that. That's 7.83, that steady resonance of the earth that keeps us grounded, which I believe to be the driving force of the evolution of earth, which I believe to have been dormant for these last 13,000 years as the Earth's been in the backside of the precession of her equinox, and now it's starting to fluctuate, and everybody's up in arms because the Schumann resonance is fluctuating. People are freaking out because they can't sleep good. Everything's they're off. But I believe that's our driving force of our evolution. Our consciousness is shifting. I believe it's been dormant for 13,000 years. 6,500 years ago was the dawn of civilization, the Sumeria, which was the dawn of agriculture, slavery, patriarchy, time, money, all the things that have not been serving us. Before then, civilization was going just fine for a long, long, long time. Anyway, all that shifting, waking up, and so I'm sure I'm going to be talking about Schumann resonance, because I've been talking about that for a long time, way before all it's happening now. You know, I've been saying that it's happening. Anyway, if you want to know more about that, I got a ton of shorts on there, on here. So this whole thing, you know, yesterday came up that I was going to start writing. I'm excited about it. And then I've been trying to figure out how this channel was going to go. I knew there was a shift coming with this channel. I was going to stop talking about all this, be so focused on just the things I was, you know. That was kind of the backstory, getting out the meat of some of this stuff. And so yeah, I'm excited. I think this channel is going to shift and be here with me as I'm writing this book, which, you know, will be on here on these videos. And I'm still going to be talking about the philosophies. I'm going to be talking about as I move through it, you know, the things that are coming up, the things that as I'm working through them, I'll be able to talk with you guys, share on here live as it's happening, you know, as I move through a day of writing. I'll be able to discuss these philosophies or these world things or these social issues, or, you know, the things that are happening on the front lines, or these, you know, esoteric, energetic things, or how these all tie together, or, you know, I'll be able to get feedback from you guys about how that goes. And that is going to be a beautiful thing. My whole, you know, the last book, Stylish Transient, was such a, you know, it's such a metafictional mind twist of, you know, because it's all told through all these different perspectives. And that's the story, is that the journey is the reflection of all these different perspectives of things. And so now it's even more taking that to another level, getting to work with you guys on how it goes. I don't know if this will be a metafictional mess like how that last one was. I love it, but, you know, I would love some feedback on if that resonates with you guys, how Stylish Transient was. It really got out there, and I really had so much fun twisting it, and there's so many hidden Easter eggs, and to unravel it. And I think I'm going to start live streaming. You know, I've been live streaming some on here talking about all this other stuff. I think I'm going to start live streaming as I'm writing. You know, maybe just sitting down here by the river writing, so you get to see my process, you know, which will be a lot of just quiet. I'm obviously just in my head writing about stuff, and then I go back and read a sentence a few times, or kind of see how the sentence flows, or write kind of one word at a time. A lot of times I don't know the end of the sentence as I start it. And, you know, if you know me, there's a lot of wordplay and a lot of twists on words, and maybe using a word in a different context which gives it a different meaning. And so a lot of times I don't quite know that, and so then it comes out and pours out. So that'll be fun. You know, if you're into that process, you can tune in on the live stream and see, you know, kind of just as it's coming together. And you'll be able to kind of throw in some nugget, you know, if you comment. That'd be, you know, I don't know what I'm going to be writing about. You know, I know how it goes, and I know the types of things that are going to be coming out, and I learn so much about myself and my own philosophy as it comes out. So this will be live, deepening that philosophy. And then, of course, on Patreon, you know, the Cage Free Mechanic Patreon, where we do you know, I've started kind of live streaming as I'm driving around fixing people's cars. Maybe I'll be live stream, you know, an even deeper version of what we're sharing on here. And of course, there'll be free books and free audiobook, or however it goes. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see how it goes. It's a whole new thing, whole new journey, and it's beautiful. I get to be back to writing, back to sharing myself in this way. It's been so deeply impactful for me, and I know it's deeply impactful for those that resonate with it. And I think the world is ready. You know, I've felt for a long time that I was kind of ahead of my time, or whatever. You know, the things I was writing about, you know, I knew that the masses weren't ready to receive them, that only the people that, you know, that found, you know, the few were. And I think now people are starting to wake up. And as the earth is waking up, through this shift of consciousness, as human resonance rises, as she sheds her chrysalis, the things that haven't been serving her, that have been created in this bubble of adversity, are breaking away, and we're rising up with this most beautiful next iteration of life. And yeah, it's beautiful. So I don't know how this is going to go. I'm excited about it. You know, like I say, my last book, I wrote the first line, or the first like page, half a page, and it was like a year and a half later by the time I picked it back up. We'll try not to drag it out like that, but we're gonna do it together, you know. I'm excited. If you're interested, check out my other book, Stylish Transients, my latest, you know, I feel like a masterpiece, but it's a mind twist. It's out there. Uncage Eden, Liberation's Garden. The first one, step one, it's only available in ebook. They're free all over the internet. You got to pay for them on Amazon. Amazon's like a whole rigmarole to even be able to get on free on there. You know, I appreciate the support. If you want to buy them, you know, I do get a little bit from that. They're print books, obviously. We're on Patreon. You know, now as I'm stepping into this whole new chapter of using money and learning how to be, you know, I used to just shy away from it and like, I didn't want to touch it, like I said, for 4 years. Got to where I would touch it for someone else, or I would touch it like with like a leather piece that I didn't even want it to, like, its energy to be there at all. And I was just so against it that then I like had this mind frame of it being a bad thing, and it was fine. I lived for a long time in abundance. I had abundance. I had everything that I needed. Had incredible experience, but without money. And so now I'm rewiring that energetic connection and not seeing it as that bad thing. You know, I've been doing a lot of work. I do a little ceremony that I do in the mornings with money, with paper money, and with water, and with imagine letting that money not be that conduit of debt that I've talked about, that conduit of scarcity, but to realign myself with being able to invite that abundance into our life, you know, and in a way where I'm still living purely from the heart. You know, I'm not writing this book thinking about money or thinking about, well, how I need to write this so that it will sell more copies. You know, that's not happening. You know, I write pretty against capitalism. I'm still not going to be like pro-capitalism, but I'm pro allowing that energy to pour into our life in a good way, you know. So when that audio book, that money came in from that audio book from years past, you know, I'm in a place of being grateful for that, gratitude, you know, and that's not being like, money. So grateful. So much gratitude. We're so blessed. We get to live right here. We have a little perfect baby up there. I get to be writing and sharing with you guys. And if you've made it this far, I assume that you're a fan or will be a fan. And, you know, there's a free audiobook of Uncage Eden. So I appreciate your support. We got a Patreon, Cage Free Mechanic. So we'll do all the stylish transient stuff, the book stuff, and it will be free mechanic, and it'll support the Earth House that we build in South Dakota. We'd love to be building some more here. We do disaster, we do a bunch of stuff, and I've kind of had to take that little bit of time off because it was a winter and we had baby. But the more support that we get through, you know, just being able to do this, do books, and do Cage Free Mechanic and on Patreon and all that, the more that we could just pour our heart out in this. You know, our real ideal is to be buying a school bus and outfit and gear it up to be able to hit the road. It's doing good deeds and traveling, going out to the res and going around fixing cars wherever we're at and riding and traveling with baby and getting some land and building a forest school, and we got all kinds of plans. Then we seen a school bus yesterday for sale for like super cheap for like $6,000, and it's already been renovated, most of the stuff in it. And so that would be a cool part of this journey. We would love to just be able to travel around doing good deeds, writing about it, praying. Anyway, I got to get to work on the stuff. It's time to start.